Hi, this is Neal Spackman with the Baydha Project. It's been 18 months since we first planted our swales. I'm going to walk you through and show you some of the progress we've had here and some of the successes and some of the whys of what we're doing. This is one of our swales higher up on the site. All of the trees here are 18 months old since we planted. There's a cat that's decided to move in, and I'm just going to go tree to tree, talk about what they're doing for us. This is Prosopis Juliflora. These trees are easily the ones that have grown the fastest and the tallest and that need the least water. You can see that after a year we had pods fall. This is good food for foraging animals. Chickens and goats will eat this. This is also a nitrogen fixer, and it's a good copper source, so it's something that provides a lot of benefit to us, and it grows fast and it grows well in a very dry and very salty soil. This is Parkinsonia Aculeata, and we've had a lot of these die, but the ones that have succeeded have done pretty well. None of them have flowered yet, but this is a good bee forage tree, as well as a nitrogen fixer. This is Moringa oleifera. We initially only planted about 10 of these, half of which have died and half of which have done pretty well. This one, you can see how big it was when we first planted it, where all those branches are sprouting out in about the middle of the trunk. We planted the stick, that's how big the stick was, so it's grown a good 1.5 meters in the year since we planted it. We did this at the end of the winter, whereas a bunch of the others we did at the beginning of the winter. This is a Casuarina, or an Australian pine. We planted about 100 of these a 1.5 years ago, and most of them have died. We have maybe 10 that are still alive, and those 10 will give us a good genetic stock that we can breed other Casuarinas that will live here. But of all the trees we planted, these probably did the worst. This is probably the best Casuarina we've got on site. It's doing really well. It's grown 2 meters in about 1.5 years. Probably what we'll do is we'll take the seed from this one, and then that's what we'll plant in other places, because we know that this has genetics that can survive the climate, survive the soil that we've got right now. This is a Zizyphus Spinachristi. It's a local type of Jujube. Gives very small fruits, but it's excellent bee forage, good coppicing. It's alleged to have nitrogen fixing capabilities, but it's not proven in this region of the world. These have done really well. They've flowered, they've given us a little bit of fruit, and on average they've grown 1.5 meters to 2 meters in the last 1.5 years. This is an Albizia Lebbeck. Here you can see from a previous rainfall, we had the water from the wadi overflow its banks and it rushed into the swale here, so we've got some silt buildup filling up. It's messed with the level ground here. But that's one of the things you have to deal with when you're working with swales, is if water overflows the banks, or if it enters your swale from a point where you don't expect, or if there's really no vegetation holding things together, then there's a real chance of silt flooding in and messing with the bottom of your swale. This is the end of our drip line. It's the northern part of this swale before we connect with the wadi where the flash floods run through. And because the water pressure is lower on this end, we had our initial trees that we planted here died, and we replaced them 6 months ago. On the left, this is another Prosopis. It's called Albizia Lebbeck, and on the right, it's a Zizyphus or a Cedra, and they're both doing fine with the lower water pressure and the less water that they're getting as compared to the others that we planted here initially. This is looking south at a lower swale. You can see our diversion structures, our diversion dams have caught mulch that washed down from higher up. They've also caught silt, and there is ground cover that's beginning to get established here. So through this structure, we've started the process of ecological succession. You can also see on the swale where we planted, on the side closest to me, the trees are smaller because they're not getting as much water due to the pressure in the drip line. And as you go down the swale, things just get bigger. And that's okay, because eventually we're going to take the drip irrigation off of these trees. And the ones that are on the northern side of the swale closer to me, because they're getting less water, they're probably putting more energy into developing their tap roots and their deeper roots. So it may be that when we take the drip line off, that these smaller trees actually do better than the ones that look bigger now, because they've been forced to go deeper with their root system instead of being able to rely on plentiful drip irrigation that's higher up in the soil profile. This is the northern area of our demonstration site. The border of our site is that mountain ridge in the background. And this is one of the soils that we have yet to plant. And even though we haven't planted anything, there's an enormous difference between what's outside of the swale and what's inside. Outside of the swale, you have 100% runoff of your water, so there's no chance or anything to really grab hold and start to live. It's very compacted, very rocky, tremendously difficult for any kind of plant life to get established. And then you take a look inside the swale, and we have these little shrubs that began to be established in January of this year, about 9 months ago. And further down the swale, you can see that there's lots of, if not greenery, brownery that is still alive, still hanging on. It'll make it a full year or two without any water after the last rainfall. So even without planting anything on this swale, we've gotten ecological succession started. We have life starting to come back just because we had a place where the water could soak in, where the seeds could wash through and be stopped, and then they had a chance to live because that's where the water went. We stopped it, we forced it into the ground, and that's going to give life a chance to come back. So even without planting, these swales in this kind of extreme climate can make a tremendous difference in getting life established and bringing life back to the land. This is on the lower elevation side of the site. All these trees are about 6 months old. We planted them in February of 2014. So this is a newer swale that is just starting to get established. Each tree is mulched where it's planted. We've got 3 pioneer species going on here: a Zizyphus, a Prosopis, and a Lucana. It's a little more mulched, although it's very hard to keep the mulch around because when it's windy, the wind just picks everything up. But this is a more recent planting. It's a good swale in an arid, super arid climate. This is the area where, if you watched my reversing the cycle of desertification video, this is where our perimeter berm caught a lot of water. We planted a row of trees along the line where the water rose to. And then you can see where the water sat and flooded, that it is now littered with native plants, native ground covers, small shrubs that are starting to develop. We're going to plant at least 4 more rows of trees here. Probably Acacia tortilis and a Prosopis, both of which can perform hydraulic redistribution in the root systems. But These trees are only 8 months old, and they've grown faster than our other newer trees, probably because there's a lot more water sitting under this berm. But they're getting established really well, and as they grow, they're going to provide some windbreak, they're going to provide shade, they're going to increase the carbon content in the soil and increase the soil's capacity to absorb and hold on to that water. So as these systems develop, it makes it easier and easier for more life to come here. And eventually, after these pioneer systems are established, then we can bring in things like fruit trees. We can bring in date palms, olives, figs, pomegranates, citrus, bongo nuts, and other things that most people would look at as more productive trees, but which wouldn't be able to grow here without the support that these other pioneer species are providing. So eventually on this site, we're going to have a functioning farm. We're going to be able to produce fruit, other food, nuts, fiber, medicines, oils, meats, dairy products. And we're doing it all using less water than the rain that we've been able to catch on site. There you have it. That's an update on our swales and our site. We're 4 years into the Baydha Project, 20 months after planting our first trees, and hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you very much.